The City of God. 15 years after Augustine wrote Confessions, at a time when he was bringing to a close, and invoking government power to do so, his long struggle with the Donatists, but before he had worked himself up to action against the Pelagians, the Roman world was shaken by news of a military action in Italy. A ragtag army under the leadership of Alaric, a general of Germanic ancestry and thus credited with leading a barbarian band, had been seeking privileges from the empire for many years, making from time to time extortionate raids against populous and prosperous areas. Finally, in 410, his forces attacked and seized the city of Rome itself, holding it for several days before decamping to the south of Italy. The military significance of the event was nil. Such was the disorder of Roman government that other war bands would hold provinces hostage more and more frequently, and this particular band would wander for another decade before settling mainly in Spain and the south of France. But the symbolic effect of seeing the city of Rome taken by outsiders for the first time since the Gauls had done so in 390 BCE shook the secular confidence of many thoughtful people across the Mediterranean. Coming as it did less than 20 years after the decisive edict against paganism by the Emperor Theodosius I in 391 CE, it was followed by speculation that perhaps the Roman Empire had mistaken its way with the gods. Perhaps the new Christian God was not as powerful as he seemed. Perhaps the old gods had done a better job of protecting their followers. It is hard to tell how seriously or widely such arguments were made. Paganism by this time was in disarray, and Christianity's hold on the reins of government was unshakable. But Augustine saw in the murmured doubts a splendid polemical occasion he had long sought, and so he leapt to the defense of God's ways. That his readers and the doubters whose murmurs he had heard were themselves pagans is unlikely. At the very least, it is clear that his intended audience comprised many people who were at least outwardly affiliated with the Christian Church. During the next 15 years, working meticulously through a lofty architecture of argument, he outlined a new way to understand human society, setting up the city of God over and against the city of man. Rome was dethroned, and the sack of the city shown to be of no spiritual importance, in favor of the heavenly Jerusalem, the true home and source of citizenship for all Christians. The city of man was doomed to disarray, and wise men would, as it were, keep their passports in order as citizens of the city above, living in this world as pilgrims longing to return home. De Civitate Dei contra Paganos, circa 413 to 426, The City of God, is divided into 22 books. The first 10 refute the claims to divine power of various pagan communities. The last 12 retell the biblical story of humankind from Genesis to the Last Judgment, offering what Augustine presents as the true history of the city of God against which, and only against which, the history of the city of man, including the history of Rome, can be properly understood. The work is too long and at times, particularly in the last books, too discursive to make entirely satisfactory reading today, but it remains impressive as a whole and fascinating in its parts. The stinging attack on paganism in the first books is memorable and effective. The encounter with Platonism in books 8x is of great philosophical significance, and the last books, especially book 19, with a vision of true peace, offer a view of human destiny that would be widely persuasive for at least 1,000 years. In a way, Augustine's The City of God is, even consciously, the Christian rejoinder to Plato's Republic and Cicero's imitation of Plato, his own Republic. The City of God would be read in various ways throughout the Middle Ages, at some points virtually as a founding document for a political order of kings and popes that Augustine could hardly have imagined. At its heart is a powerful contrarian vision of human life, one which accepts the place of disaster, death, and disappointment while holding out hope of a better life to come, a hope that in turn eases and gives direction to life in this world. Reconsiderations. Retractationes, 426 to 427, Reconsiderations, written in the last years of his life, offers a retrospective rereading of Augustine's career. In form, the book is a catalogue of his writings with comments on the circumstances of their composition and with the retractions or rectifications he would make in hindsight. One effect of the book was to make it much easier for medieval readers to find and identify authentic works of Augustine, and this was surely a factor in the remarkable survival of so much of what he wrote. Another effect of the book is to imprint even more deeply on readers Augustine's own views of his life. There is very little in the work that is false or inaccurate, but the shaping and presentation make it something of a work of propaganda. The Augustine who emerges has been faithful, consistent, and unwavering in his doctrine and life. Many who knew him would have seen instead either progress or outright tergiversation, depending on their point of view.